Cyber Patriot. Okay, I'll restart. So my name is Monica Bao. I'll host this session of today's Cyber Patriot lesson, cybersecurity lesson, and then as well as next Thursday's cybersecurity lesson. So today we're going to be talking about cyberterrorism. So let's see. Let's start with the agenda. So these are kind of the topics we're going to go through talking about cyberterrorism. So as you can see, we'll just first discuss what is it, what's like the meaning behind it, and then we're gonna go towards like transition towards its effects. So let's have some discussion questions. So when you hear the word terrorism, what words, images, events come to mind? Like if you like hear the word terrorism or read it, what's the first thing you think of? Yeah, definitely. I think especially growing up post 9/11, you can really see the difference in yeah, like TSA. It's really ramped up. Afghanistan, yeah, and I think terrorism, a lot of, I guess what I've seen, a lot of American people usually see it as the global kind of east side, northeast, so like, and maybe even the Middle East. So Middle East and also the like east side, so Russia, like North Korea, China, Middle East, like Afghanistan, as you mentioned. I think that's a lot of at least for me growing up in North America post 9/11, yeah, I definitely get that. And then what do you think has to happen for an event to be classified as an act of terrorism? So yeah, let's see some, hello? Okay, very good. Wait, do you see my full screen? Here, okay, hold on. I feel like I didn't share that correctly. Okay, yeah, I think this is better. Okay. Sorry, this is my first session I'm hosting. Okay, which we're actually gonna discuss what makes something an act of terrorism in our presentation. So let's see, what is cyberterrorism? So I think in general, terrorism is any premeditated, politically motivated attack against information systems, against maybe a government system or a religious system, in order to get, there's lots of goals from this. So like get information, get money, obtain trust, like, or maybe not have trust against the system that was attacked. So it usually threatens violence or results in violence. And even if you're trying to scare the common populace, that's also a tactic or like a result that can be gained. And it sometimes expands to include any cyber attack that intimidates or generates fear in the target population. So that's what I just explained, right? So I think people being scared is a very big factor in change, right? So as you can imagine, like going with the example before 9/11, that was such a big event, right? Like I think it really changed America post 9/11. And it's often done by damaging or disrupting critical infrastructure. So all of this is not exclusive to cyberterrorism. It's more of a general defined cyberterrorism, but like with the prefix cyber, it's obviously going to be infiltrating systems like maybe servers that contain all this information or contain the data of the people. So there's three main criteria for it to be considered terrorism. It has to be premeditated. So it has to be organized. It can't be on a whim, like unexpected, like all of a sudden, oh, I just feel like doing this. It has to be planned and for a reason. It has to be politically motivated, either like religious, like politics, like it can be any sort of kind of with an agenda, basically. And it has to be against a big governmental or religious system. So as I mentioned before, I guess I'll just keep on going back to 9/11 because everyone knows this is such a big deal. But that was against the US government, right? Let's see. So here's a quick infographic about, like, I guess more specifically, cyber terrorism. This previous slide was more on, this slide was more on just general terrorism, I feel like. But you can see there's lots of branches, right? So there's many different types. So cyber terrorists and hacktivists use the same tools, but generally for different agendas, right? So hacktivists are kind of different, where it's they want to make their movement visible, right? So if they're fighting against something, they definitely want to make everyone aware of it, that change in their opinion needs to happen, right? They might be fighting against like propaganda, might be fighting against like any racism or like sexism, homophobia, but like hacktivists and cyber terrorists who try to take down these governmental systems usually use the same tools, but they're, I think, different under different names, but they're usually the same process going there. So I think this infographic has a lot to kind of process. I know I was definitely like, when I first saw it, I was like, whoa, okay. But what's interesting is that there's a need for international legislation. I feel like, yeah, if you see my cursor, I think that over the years, especially with like the internet and like making things digital is a new future. I definitely, right? I think everyone can agree on that. And with that comes like all of these different tools that you have to take under control to manage a good future and make it organized. So why would anyone be motivated to for cyber terrorism? I think that, so there's 4 main reasons, right? So number 1, to destroy enemies' operational capabilities. If you're against someone, you definitely want to take them down a notch or lessen their power or hold they have over you, right? This is one of the main parts in cyber terrorism, and it's mainly employed for this particular reasons. The terrorists feel that the usage of cyber capabilities offers them like a lower cost but effective solution. Since, once again, I mentioned that since digital is future, and all of these companies and all of these systems are transferring to make their records digital, cyber terrorism is often a low cost and high reward system to get the data that they want. So since it's such a low cost effective solution to severely damage or destroy the targets in order to force them to be unable to continue their normal operations, the consequences of like attacks like these, if successful, can be very, very damaging in various ways, including major collapses in economical and social standings. If critical infrastructure and businesses' operations are hit, it can literally bring an entire nation or business to a halt, which we'll get into this a historical example later in the slideshow. But yeah, since this is like such this is like the main reason for cyber terrorism, or at least you can see this reason again and again in many historical uses. So number 2 is to destroy or misrepresent the reputation of an organization, nation, or alliance. I think the will of the people is very important. I saw this study that was once like, if only 3% of the population like is collectively outraged or I guess voting for change in a very visible way, major change will happen. So the will of the people is very important, right? So to destroy or misrepresent the reputation of an organization, like nation or alliance or religious system, is also one of the main goals of cyber terrorism. A lot of these organizations are able to operate really effectively and are highly respected within like groups of people, certain people, right? And regarded because of their strong reputation. So because of this reputation playing such a high and heavy view of the people, to destroy this reputation as like a weaker kind of system, or maybe leak uh, leak private documents that were meant to stay private, they can definitely change the will of the people. This includes like website defacements and starting false rumors concerning the like organization through electronic means, such as like email, websites, and others. Number 3, to persuade those attacks to change affiliation. Sometimes cyberterrorism is used in order to force the attacked entities to change their association or affiliation to certain parties. Even though this goal is much more harder to be carried out, right? Because I think change in people, if you approach them like gently, they're more willing to be able to change because they can tell that like you're not trying to attack them or anything. So if you're trying to get them to change through illegal means and force, it'll be much more harder, right? There has been cases where it has been proved to be successful. So defending against such motivated attacks requires the attacked organization to form strong with its partner entities in order like to be able to handle if like attacks like these in order to change affiliation. And our last one, this is just a like small list of the biggest reasons that you see, is to demonstrate to their own followers that they are capable of inflicting significant harm on their targets. So this is kind of like a more primitive, I guess, kind of idea. If you've ever heard of larger army diplomacy in like ancient Britain, like history, I kind of think of it as that way. So the more power you have, the more easily that people listen to you because you have the power. In most cases, you might have control over their lives, or they might look up to you like because you know more. So obviously you would make better decisions in their eyes. So to demonstrate to their own followers that they are capable of inflicting significant harm onto their targets, cyber terrorists are also like really keen to carry out cyber attacks because they want to prove to their followers and the world that they have the capabilities of destroying or inflicting severe damages onto its targets. There's still a large number of people who are unconvinced about the realities of cyber terrorism and its capabilities. I think this mostly lies in older people who didn't grow up with the internet, so maybe not know the full force or strength of the internet and how much information is on the like on servers and on the internet. So thus, if the cyber terrorists feel like they have a need to prove their capabilities of performing like electronic based attacks, like to their targets, they might do so to prove their like prowess to the world. So here's a graph that I found interesting. It's kind of not clear because I couldn't find an HD version of it. But in order to defend ourselves from cyber terrorists, we have to identify who they are in the first place. As you can see, the majority of people are amateurs, maybe looking for a way into this hacking sphere. 10%, around 10% are potential professional hackers for hire, maybe white hat hackers. And then only 0.1% is world-class cyber criminals. So it's really hard to train your way up there to be proficient. I have this image of my mind. I have this notion that a lot of people think that hacking is really easy, but in reality, so much anti-hacking software has been developed and like techniques have been made in order to combat it. And hacking into world-class systems, such as maybe NASA or something, takes a lot of knowledge and planning. So the threats of cyberterrorism can be inflicted by anyone without hostile intents that has access and knowledge of utilizing cyber capabilities, such as amateur and professional hackers. Maybe they're a disgruntled employee, unsatisfied with their job. Maybe they're professional cyber criminals or cyber terrorist groups and others. The matter of fact is that the threats of cyberterrorism can come from so many different sources, and sometimes it can seem to be such an impossible task to actually defend ourselves from it because there's so many ways that systems can be exploited and people might have motivations for exploiting. However, with proper training and strategic security implementations, we would be able to significantly reduce the changes of cyberterrorism attacks from happening to us. So here are the types of cyberterrorism attacks, and I feel like this is going to be a longer section. So there are various types of cyberterrorism attacks that are used by cyber terrorists. I think a lot of these attacks might be used elsewhere, not specifically cyberterrorism, such as like obviously DOS, right? You see this mentioned a lot in other attacks, maybe to companies or something, but these are the ones mostly found in cyberterrorism attacks. So number one would just be simple unstructured kind of hold on, I feel like I have my notes wrong. Okay. So we have kind of categories to our cyberterrorism attacks. There's three main categories that you have to think of before we get into these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bullets, right? So number one is simple, unstructured, the capability to conduct basic hacks against individual systems using tools created by other people. This kind of organization possesses little target analysis and command and control skills, as well as limited learning capability. So this might be maybe just even a group of friends coming together and trying to attack the company they work for because they're not happy with their pay or something like that. It's very maybe the motivation is still there, like maybe the motivation is as strong as some of these more organized categories, but the execution is what makes the difference. So our second kind of category is advanced structure. So the capability to conduct more sophisticated attacks against multiple systems or networks and to possibly modify or create basic hacking tools. So they can create their own systems and their own tools to use, and they're a little bit more driven with what they do or have the idea of what they want to do together. The organization also possesses an elementary target analysis and command control skills, as well as relatively modest learning capability. So they've probably been in the field for enough to know a lot of more maybe harder hacks to do, as well as they can analyze their target and search for weaknesses. So the third main category is complex coordinated. So the capability for coordinated attacks capable of causing mass disruptions against integrated and heterogeneous defenses. So what does that mean? The terrorists have the ability to create really sophisticated hacking tools within their organization. They're also really highly capable of conducting target analysis and command and control. They also possess an advanced organization learning capability. So the people inside their organizations are proficient with their knowledge, but always ready to learn about the newest kind of hack there is. There are 5 main types of cyberterrorism attacks, which are incursion, destruction, disinformation, denial of service, and defacement of websites, as mentioned in this slideshow. Some of these attacks are more severe than the others, and also have different objectives, but they're all commonly found within cyberterrorism attacks. So our number one attack is incursion. So these types of attacks are carried out with the purpose of gaining access or penetrating into computer systems and networks to try and get or modify information. So this is more what you may imagine when you think of hacking, where you're bent over a computer trying to get into another computer's information, right? This method is really common and widely used with a high success rate. There's many loopholes in computer systems and networks that terrorists can take advantage of to obtain and or modify vital information, which can also be used to inflict further damages to the organization or for personal gain. So I think, especially with today, as popular as the internet is, you always see these like system updates, and I think that's really important. And usually I used to just like roll my eyes like, oh, it's going to take me 30 minutes to update my computer again when I have to get in this assignment. Oh, what do I do? But in reality, it's really useful because with the popularity of the internet, new hacks are always coming out. And the longer you have an older operating system or program, the easier it is to hack because there's going to be more and more programs for it. So if you update your systems regularly, maybe if you're using Microsoft, they will try to fix holes that hackers can get into. So number 2 is destruction. This method of attack is used to intrude into computer systems and networks with the main purpose of inflicting severe damage or destroying them. So this time, it's not about learning the information, it's about destroying the information. So this information could be really important, or maybe it's really bad information about the attacker's organization, so they want to destroy it. The consequences of such an attack can be really disastrous, where organizations might be forced to be out of operations for an amount of time, right? Depending on the severity and how much stuff was destroyed. It can also be really costly for the affected organizations to get their operations back up. If you've ever heard of ransomware, it kind of reminds me of that, where you have to pay this amount of fine or else all your stuff will be destroyed, right? So it's really costly to restore. And also, if the information destroyed is really expensive or really important, the company that had their information destroyed might have to repay money to their customers for having that information destroyed. So I think this is mainly a financial kind of ruin thing instead of a reputation ruining thing. Although it will ruin organization's reputation if they have a large amount of information destroyed. The main goal of this attack is money. Number 3 is disinformation. This method is used to spread rumors or information that can have a really severe impact to a particular target. A really recent one could be Donald Trump saying the election was rigged, right? Although this wasn't cyber specifically, it did spread really fast throughout the internet. This is also a little more not typical hacking you might think of, because it's not hacking, it's more of spreading rumors and using the internet as a tool for it. And regardless of whether the rumors are true or not, the use of such attacks really recklessly can create a really uncontrollable chaos to the nation or the organization. This type of attack is really kind of difficult to contain since it can be done almost instantly without the need to access the organization's computers. It's kind of separate from it, and it's more about changing the general population's idea about the organization. Number 4 is denial of service. So denial of service attacks, or also known as DOS attacks, are more widely known as a really general common method of attack, you could DOS a website maybe by sending too many signals to it, and then the servers can't handle the signals, right? The impact of such attacks is really felt by e-commerce websites. So you can imagine if you've ever went shopping on Amazon Prime Day, sometimes the website goes down because there's just too many people wanting to get those deals. So that's an example of it, although not intentional. So the main objective of DOS attacks is to disable or disrupt the online operations by flooding targeted servers with huge number of packets. So imagine a packet as a package of information that you're sending to the website. So this would ultimately lead to the servers being unable to handle so many packets because they all think it's, oh, I have to handle this one and this one. They think it's from legitimate users. The impact from such attacks can be disastrous from both an economic and social perspective, where it can cause organizations to suffer massive losses from not only, because this usually happens in shopping websites, right? It not only blocks the access of products to the people, but it's also really, in general, receiving attacks of cyberterrorism just looks really bad on your company. So number 5 is defacement of websites. This type of attack is targeted to deface the websites of the victims. The websites can be either changed totally to include messages from the cyber terrorists for propaganda or publicity purposes, which might cause them to be taken down or to redirect the users to other websites, which may contain similar messages. The number of cases of such attacks has kind of dwindled over the past few years. It's not as common since there's a bigger awareness of the issue. If you can think of like people telling you to be careful when clicking on links, and I guess a greater knowledge of how the internet works and how quickly it can spread propaganda. However, there's still a small number of cases that it's still happening, and thus proper security measures will always need to be taken to try to avoid such embarrassing and financially disastrous situations from happening again. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. So let's think about some real life scenarios, because I feel like that might make it seem more serious, or you can really connect it to your own life. So even though there's not been a lot of obvious cases of cyber terrorism attacks affecting the entire nation where you can't like do certain things, right? Steps should still be taken to prevent such occurrences from happening. The critical national infrastructures that might be affected by cyber terrorism includes electrical, telecommunication, and water supplies. So a lot of these basic human needs or human rights providers might be taken down during cyber terrorism, because that's the quickest way to engage the people, right? Since cyber terrorism and terrorism is a lot about moving and swaying public opinion, taking away a person's human rights such as water or electricity, that'll really get them engaged really quick. Since these infrastructures are kind of generally well protected in most countries, as an entire nation's operations depend on them, so they're usually pretty well protected. But the level of security on these infrastructures can still be further improved in order to provide a tougher resistance to block the cyber terrorists. So cyber terrorism can be one major attack where everything changes overnight, or it could be a series of small attacks, right? Think about ripples of water. But if you keep on getting hit by these ripples, obviously you're gonna move once in a while. So let's see these scenarios. So scenario 1 is the operations of a utility company which specialize in electrical distribution that serves critical businesses is disrupted by cyber terrorists. The terrorists managed to interrupt the distribution of electricity to the customers. This will, of course, cause a huge problem to the affected entities, or areas to carry on normal operations and the normal way of life. Since the internet is fueled by electricity, I think cutting off electricity now implies not only cutting off electricity to your house, maybe, so there's no lights, but there's also a lack of information as well, that you can't know really what's going on to your house. Hold on. Okay. So scenario 2 is cyber terrorists who are interested to gain some publicity release network worms and viruses target to disable the operations of a critical financial institution after identifying a major weakness in the firm's network infrastructure. The worms cause the computer system to consume very large payloads, making them unable to service requests from legitimate users. This will cause the entire network and computer systems to become practically useless. This will result in, how do I go back? Okay. Major losses financially and cause the firm's dependencies to underperform critical duties. So maybe cyber terrorists just want to be public, I think, is also a very common reason why cyberterrorism attacks launch. Fame is a very driving motivator, and I think it's usually a lesser reason, like it's not mentioned as much, because when you think of terrorism, you think about maybe bigger goals to attack bigger structures. So this is another example of denial of service attacks where you don't allow legitimate users to access or use your website. And moving on to scenario 3, cyber terrorists managed to disrupt the air traffic control systems, causing the controllers to be unable to direct the airplanes in the required manner. This might cause the pilots to lose control of the computerized navigation systems on the airplanes and make their task of ensuring a safe takeoff and landing much harder. So this is much more like, I feel like this is much more fear-inducing, right? Because you alone probably can live without Amazon for a day. But if your plane gets into a car crash, you alone, or your plane gets into a plane crash, then you alone cannot stop that. Let's move on. So here's some strategies to deal with cyber terrorism. So number 1, pursue and prosecute the perpetrators. This is usually a good idea for any crime. Right, so the parties that have been directly affected from the attacks by the cyber terrorists should be more aggressive in pursuing the perpetrators. Even though this exercise might be really costly to find them and track them down, and even taking people to court is really costly, it'll definitely be to the organization's advantage if they're able to identify the perpetrators and prosecute them to the full extent of the law. So this way, it not only squashes the potential for the perpetrators to do this again to their own company, but it also makes other potential perpetrators know that you're not messing around, right? If there's an increasing number of such attackers that can be brought to justice, it might change the general mindset of the cyber terrorist community, and they'll need us think long and hard about the consequences of their actions if they are going to get caught. So it might be a good way to of decreasing the number of such attacks in the long run. So number 2 is develop the best security practices. So organizations should ensure that they develop and deploy a tested set of the best security practices suited specifically for their own operations. So this is not only downloading some random antivirus from the internet, maybe like McAfee or something, but ensuring that the people within the operation know about the security practices and can develop their own tailored to their own company. These activities will require a lot of coordinated efforts from all parties in the organization, because security procedures should be followed by every department. The developed list of the best security practices should cover all the aspects involved in information security. As a starting point, it would be a good idea to adopt existing international standard guidelines for information security, such as the this is going to be, I listed some policy names, but I feel like it might not be really common for the general people, but these are some government international guidelines, such as ISO 17799 or BS 7799. These standards provide the detailed steps that should be taken to secure organizations from an information security standpoint. Though organizations can later modify or improve on the provided guidelines and adapt it based on their own operations and needs in order to obtain the best results. Number 2 is be proactive. So number 3 is be proactive. Organizations and the general public should be more proactive in dealing with cyberterrorism issues by keeping up to date on the latest information related to threats, vulnerabilities, and incidents. That they should be more committed in improving their information security posture. By being constantly aware of the various components of cyberterrorism that could directly affect the people and the company, we were able to implement stronger security measures that will reduce the chances of cyber attacks happening to us. Organizations should always be looking to improve upon their existing security infrastructure. I think this strive for improvement is really important because not only are security systems kind of developing more and more, but you have to remember that hackers are also developing more and more. And as I mentioned, if you don't keep your systems up to date, then it's easier to find exploits to it. Critical activities such as security audits should be performed more often to reduce redundancies in the security implementation. It should be remembered that security, once again, is a really continuous process and not an off-the-shelf, like you can just have it once and just be done with it. Number 4 is to deploy vital security applications. So the use of security applications such as firewalls, intrusion detection systems, and antivirus software, and others should be encouraged and in some cases mandated to ensure better protection against cyberterrorism. This kind of ties back into the developed practice, best security practices, in the way that it requires companies to take control over their own data. Organizations should deploy both network and host-based intrusion detection systems, or as a shortened version, it would be IDS, along with other security applications. There should be personnel who are assigned to record, monitor, and report all suspicious activities in the organization's network with the aid of the latest security systems. And all of these tasks can be done much faster and simpler. The prevention and retention of critical information required for forensic analysis should be ensured in order to facilitate further investigations. So any maybe events of hacks in the past, you should definitely keep that down, write that down to make sure it never happens again. Number 5 would be establish business continuity and disaster recovery plans. So it's really important that business continuity and disaster recovery plans should be in place in all organizations. This is a general kind of rule to follow, not only just for cyber terrorism. These plans, to be included with the incident response activities, if not in existence, should be established and maintained. These plans should be rehearsed and tested at regular intervals to ensure their effectiveness. A lot of these strategies really tie into each other, such as maybe establish business continuity and disaster recovery plans with, and so number 5 and number 4 would both be under number 2, right? The plans that are implemented should involve 2 main activities, which are repair and restoration. The repair activity should fix the problem itself, while the restoration should try to get back any damaged hardware or software or information. Number 6 is cooperation with various firms and working groups. Organizations, as well as the general public, should establish working relationships or arrangements with the public and private bodies or organization that could really assist with issues relating to cyberterrorism. So these working groups can assist really tremendously in activities such as developing standard guidelines on improving organizational security. And once again, this ties into number 2, developing the best security processes. It would create a pool of much needed experts in the field of cyber terrorism, I guess, in the long run, in order to increase resistance in general from such attacks. So creating a kind of anti-malware or anti-cyber attack, cyber warfare community would greatly assist in the fight against cyber terrorism. Number 7 is to increase security awareness. So it's important to increase the awareness on cyber terrorism issues to the masses. Since, once again, terrorism is a lot of the times trying to influence people's personal opinions. By educating them, they would realize the importance of defending themselves from such attacks, and thus it would assist greatly in developing communities that are more really proactive in dealing with information security issues. Training programs can assist people to equip themselves with the right skills and knowledge that they are needed to protect their computer and network systems efficiently. So similar to how you get first aid training if you're a teacher, I think if you work with computers even slightly, you should get at least a basic idea of cybersecurity. Number 8 is to enforce stricter cyber laws. So the government can assist a lot in controlling cyber terrorism attacks, just like regular terrorism attacks, by adopting and revising new cyber laws that'll punish the perpetrators more heavily if they're involved with like these activities. And there should be new acts to encourage the development of efficient cybersecurity practices and to support the development and permit the use of more effective tools for law enforcement. And these laws should be introduced and maybe vouch for them. And number 9, lastly, we should encourage research and development. Organizations, especially from the public sector, should support research and development activities of personalized security tools such as firewall and IDS, which is once again the information defense systems. The main advantage of pursuing this approach rather than buying off-the-shelf products is that it will leave the perpetrators in the dark over the actual capabilities that the targets possess. And this can be a really huge advantage when dealing with really knowledgeable and experienced attackers. So next, we're going to watch a video about the future of cyber terrorism.
I don't think you're showing your sound.
Am I not? Okay, hold on. Let me see. Okay. Oh, okay, I see. Do you hear now?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
September 11th, 2001 terror strikes set the tone for warfare in the 21st century. But the 21st century has also seen the rise of another kind of warfare. Warfare that lets nations and loners do battle without guns or bombs. These days, the biggest threat we face may be a rogue actor with a laptop and a desire to wreak havoc.
Cyber warfare is probably the greatest challenge that we have as far as our nation's national security is concerned. We have an advantage over every other form of competition with possible allies, except one, and that's cyber warfare. And when you see the potential of what a successful cyber attack can achieve, it's enough to make you deeply concerned.
This is going to be the new battlefield, an unseen, invisible battlefield where teams of hackers from various nations will duel.
In 2010, a computer virus named Stuxnet demolished a secret Iranian nuclear weapons plant. Hackers at Symantec Corporation unraveled its mysteries.
What made Stuxnet different was it didn't just stick to the cyber world. It actually breached and caused sort of real-world kinetic damage. It's nothing that we had ever seen before. And so Stuxnet just began spreading all around the world onto Windows machines everywhere. But what it was doing was it was also looking for something else. It was looking for these things that are called PLCs, or these small computers that control things like factories, like the power grid.
What you see here is the code that is put onto the PLC, and this is the normal process. Code goes onto the PLC, turns the PLC on or off, and controls it.
When we first got the code, it's literally zeros and ones. You know, it's sort of unintelligible. It was only later that we were able to determine that actually this code was targeted specifically at Iran's uranium enrichment plant in Natanz.
Uranium enrichment facilities are very secure facilities. It's not like they're connected to the internet. You can't get your code in and out in that way. So one of the ways Stuxnet was able to get into the facility was via USB key. So it was able to infect USB keys, and then somebody would bring USB key with them into the secure facility, not realizing it was infected, plug it into a computer inside, and then that computer inside would be infected.
You know, we don't know definitively who is behind Stuxnet, but it's very clear that it's a nation state, and it's nation states that had something against Iran. And it's likely that it isn't a single nation state. You have to remember as well with cyber warfare that the sort of barrier to entry is quite low. If a country wants to do something like build a nuclear missile, that's actually quite difficult. But when you talk about something like cyber warfare, it's actually quite cheap and quite easy for a country to develop a cyber weapon. And that cyber weapon can have equivalent effects. You could have a cyber weapon potentially shut down the power grid, for example, on the whole East Coast. New York is out. Wall Street is out. All your banks are out. You can't even withdraw money. You know, you can imagine people panic starting and people trying to get cash. You can't get cash. ATMs aren't working. Then things like your water waste treatment plants aren't working. There's no clean water. There's going to be a run on stores. Stores potentially aren't even operating. Your credit card's not going to work at the store. There'll be absolutely mass panic.
If you can blind the US military, if you can shut down our GPS and our computer networks, our military is basically unable to function. And it could take days or weeks to get those systems back up and running. They can do tremendous damage. They can defeat your armies, your fleets, your air forces by simply blinding them, by taking down their cyber systems. I think that's a huge risk that we face.
With cyber war, I always think one of the most effective ways to fight against cyber is to find the computer and the operator and put a bullet through both of them.
Okay, so that's just an so that's just an example of what cyber terrorism can do. I think there's a lot of theatrics as well, like involved with the secret dark room hacker, just the LCD screen shining on your face. But I think a lot of it is true too. Oh, is it? Here. Does my voice sound more normal? I heard it's echoing. Okay. Okay. Wait. Let me. Does this work? Okay. Good. Let's see. So here's just a historical event that has happened in the past, just as another example. So this was not as recent. It was more back in 2017, so a couple of years ago. But this cyber attack on Ukraine shut down power grids, and you can imagine how much panic that could ensure. Because once again, you're not only shutting down maybe your light bulbs or maybe your toilet flushing or something. I'm not sure, but you're also shutting down your access to internet, which can be taken away, and which by association takes away your access to information and access to what to do next during such a scary time. So December 23rd, 2015 even. This was even before. The control centers of 3 Ukrainian electricity distribution companies were really remotely accessed. So that just highlights another part of the ease of cyberterrorism. Obviously, it's not easy learning all of these methods, right? Keeping up to date on all the recent cybersecurity methods, but you could cause such big damage remotely just from home. Taking control of these facilities, SC-ADA systems, malicious actors opened breakers at some 30 distribution substations in the capital Kiev and a western Ivano-Frankivsk region, causing more than 2,000 consumers to lose power. How many people live in Ukraine? Okay, that's like a good chunk of the population. It might not be the majority, but it's enough to cause real panic. Let me try to find what tab. Here. Okay. So, I guess I'm not gonna read through the whole article because I feel like we get the main idea, but cyber attacks has happened, and it's been really common, and I think it's really been picking up over the last few years when people really realize the power of the internet and what it can hold, and not only the internet, but computer systems in general. So here they talk about different organizations and hybrid warfare, which is even more developments in cyber warfare, which, as you can see, security is not just a one and done thing. It's a continuous set of actions that you have to get and you have to do in order to securely keep your system safe. And even then, there's no real guarantee. Think of it as a lock. So cyber security and just general security, think of it as a lock, which it'll definitely, people can still get into the thing that you locked in, right? But it'll take them much more time. It'll be much harder to access that information. So that's why security is so important. Even though there's no guarantee, it'll very severely lessen your risk to it. And let's see. Okay, that's the end of my presentation. So is there any questions? Okay. If there's no questions, okay, I guess we're a little early this time then.
Oh yeah, I have a question for you actually.
Okay, what's up? Hit me.
Okay, so you mentioned what like governments and corporations can do for cyber terrorism as a whole and communities, but what do
Real?
you think like single individuals can do to deal with cyber terrorism?
I think the main difference between big organizations and like single people is their access to resources. So in big organizations that are planning an attack, they usually have files backup or processes or like logs of previous events and a general wider amount of knowledge about infiltrating systems. And with the difference between one person, it'd be just limited to what they know and what they can get their hands on. Obviously, the internet has a lot of this information, right? But it'll be much more harder to access, especially if it's private documents. So I think so to answer your question, basically, I think the difference between one person and a team is that their access to information and knowledge. But if one person is equipped with the right information and do know what they're doing, I think they can easily make just as much damage as a big organization. Think about the first kind of email chain virus. I think it was like an I love you virus where the email would be a love letter, and then you would open up this document that was your supposed love letter, and then it would send the same email to like 50 other people and infect your system with malware. It's a very standard type of malware, but the creator behind it was just one person. So yeah. Yeah. I think I saw a video by Nexpo about the virus. Okay, any other questions? Okay. If there's not any other questions, I think we can probably end the meeting. Is that okay with everyone? Any more questions? I'm here to answer questions. Okay, I think we're good. So thank you all for being here today. I know this is my first one of these cybersecurity presentations, so I was a little nervous, but I think everything worked out well. Yeah. Thank you. No, thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Monica.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
So our next meeting, I think, will be Thursday, and Monica will teach another lesson. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll be
and
teaching about, let me see.
it's I think it's malware attacks, right?
Yeah, malware attacks.
All right.
So you better be in here again. I better see your shiny little profile pictures. Okay.
All right, thanks,
Should we
Monica.
end? Yeah, thank you.